Wow. Check this out. Unreal. Yeah, ICE agents make a guy walk out in nothing but his crony drawer, his skeebies. Watch this.
Are you kidding me? Look at him! Look at him!
New video shows a grandfather walked out of his home wearing just a blanket, shorts, and slippers during our bitter cold blast. His family says he's a U.S. citizen.
Also new today, federal prosecutors are vowing to press charges against these protesters who burst into a Sunday service. One of the church's pastors is a local ICE leader. Thanks for joining us. The head of Homeland Security now says they've made 3,000 arrests in the past 6 weeks.
Where are they taking those arrested? We're going to dig into that in a moment. But first, the latest on this dangerously cold Arctic air. We've reached a whopping 2 degrees. But if you've been outside, you know it feels much colder. And Mike, I mentally prepared myself because you told us about this last week. Not physically prepared, though.
No, I mean, it gets colder from here for sure. And in fact, dangerously cold air on the way with more Arctic air, believe it or not, even colder than what we've got out there right now. And we do have also a cool thing, not a cold thing to talk about, and that is this. The next weather tower is in Northern Lights colors because we have a really good chance of seeing a bright Northern Lights show coming up later on this evening. 1 degree on our rooftop feels like -8 with a lighter breeze than we had yesterday and this morning, thankfully. Temperature at the airport, as we mentioned, is 2, but it never got to 0 in northern Minnesota, and it won't. Our next factors that we're talking about all hour long include a clearing evening that will be cold once again. In fact, probably a little colder than last night with a west wind at 10 to 15 and overnight lows tonight ranging from about 10 below in the North Metro to 7 below in the South Metro.
Let's go back to it.
Here, and with the wind, it'll be dangerous. Lots to tell you about and get you prepared for, and we'll do that next.
All right, see you in a bit then. Thank you, Mike.
All right, we're going to take a look at your next drive. And of course, as you can anticipate on this holiday, traffic relatively light. This is one of the most substantial slowdowns we could find down in the Eden Prairie area, 169 northbound at Pioneer Trail. You can see traffic moving slow. It's about the only red on our traffic maps, indicating one of the bigger slowdowns out there. Well, it seems that the cold air has kept protests more quiet today.
But the debate about a protest at a church yesterday is heating up. The U.S. Justice Department is now investigating dozens who interrupted Sunday service. Protesters say a pastor at City's Church is also the acting director of enforcement for ICE in St. Paul. The Justice Department says they violated the FACE Act. That federal law prohibits intimidating or interfering with people's right to practice their faith. Black Lives Matter Twin City founder Chantel Allen was there.
Right now.
That people really need to be informed, and they need to pay attention to who they're following, and they need to pay attention to what it really means to be American. And it really does mean that we love our neighbors.
St. Paul police also responded to the scene and say that they are investigating. Experts say there's one thing prosecutors will look at when deciding on charges. That part of the story coming up all new at 5.
New video from St. Paul's East Side shows ICE agents pulling an elderly man from his home.
Really? Are you kidding me?
His family says Chongli Scott Tao is a U.S. citizen who was later released after agents confirmed his identity. Mark Goldberg recorded the encounter.
It is heartbreaking. It is infuriating to see U.S. citizens, and this gentleman was a U.S. citizen, ripped out of his house without a shirt on, without a coat, without pants, wearing his boxers and Crocs. I don't know how anyone could watch that happen to anyone.
ICE says they had to take Tao into custody while looking for 2 other guys. Hear why coming up all new at 6.
A man arrested in Minnesota has died in ICE custody, the agency confirmed this weekend. ICE thinks the 36-year-old from Nicaragua died by suicide at this Texas detention center. In a press release, they said that he came here illegally, but did not say anything else about his criminal history.
The facility near the Mexico border is known as Camp East Montana. It's currently housing nearly 3,000 detainees, many of them from here. So Esme Murphy's here with more about the facility. What have you found out about?
Well, it's very interesting. It's a brand new facility, just 5 months old, opened in August, specifically designed to hold the surge in detainees under President Trump's increased deportation efforts. CBS News reports the federal government awarded a company called Acquisition Logistics a $1.24 billion contract to build and operate the tent center. The company has no record of running a detention facility before this one. It's the nation's largest facility of its kind. And from what we know, this is now the third recent death there. Is there anything you can tell us, or are we able to find out about those other deaths? Well, one of them is presumed to be a medical one, so the second one. The third one is actually still under investigation. There's controversy surrounding this one. The medical examiner in Texas is reportedly planning to classify a man's death there as a homicide due to asphyxia from neck and chest compressions. ICE called it the death from medical distress.
And what do we know about conditions inside?
Well, according to human rights advocates, they're saying that the reports of overcrowding, lack of medical care, physical abuse, and lack of adequate food are everywhere. They are also explaining that these are conditions that these people are living with. Now, ICE denies that and defends the facility, saying, quote, ICE is committed to ensure that all those in custody reside in safe, secure, and humane environments. Comprehensive medical care is provided from the moment individuals arrive. And then what happens to the detainees? You know, Amelia, we really don't know. This is not the way it is when somebody's arrested here in the U.S. by U.S. authorities, where we can tell people what's happened to them, when their next court appearance is. It's not like that. We get no information. And also, I must say, the families get no information either. I think that's one of the troubling parts right there.
Yeah, and we know so many in our community may have a loved one down there.
Right,
so.
and they really don't know. We try and find information for them, but we're not able to.
He was hunted. Yeah, by definition.
We try and find information for them, but we're not able to. All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you. Well, a celebration of community and hope as the Twin Cities honors the man who had a dream of freedom. This was the scene in Powderhorn today, the Minneapolis neighborhood where an ICE agent shot and killed Renee Good. Jason Rantola shows us why community members push forward with this year's event amid so much uncertainty.
The festivities, the music and speakers honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. here at Powderhorn Park hold extra meaning this year. Family activities and meals for hundreds in the same neighborhood where Renee Good was killed by ICE agents less than 2 weeks ago.
It's been a lot. It's been really intense.
Neighbors now living in fear, looking on as ICE apprehends people of color across the state.
I see my coworkers and my neighbors terrified to leave out of the house. That's not fair.
It's impacted all of us.
Catherine Bushman is the executive director of the Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association.
It seemed more important than ever to do this event as well as we could.
Bushman acknowledges that not holding this year's celebration, which had been going on for nearly 3 decades, was a real possibility.
When I started calling the artists, I started talking to all the partners. I said, how do you feel about having the MLK event? Everybody said, we need it.
Martin Luther King Day marks a moment of reflection on how Dr. King might respond in a time like this.
I think he would say that this struggle has been going on for many years, and the fight has only changed shape, you know. I was taught that the civil rights movement solved all the problems of the world, and it really didn't.
A celebration of King's legacy, particularly for those who can't be here today.
South Minneapolis is here for one another, and so we want to be here for them.
In Minneapolis, Jason Rantola, WCCO News.
More to come on the federal crackdown, including impacts in greater Minnesota. John Lauritsen spoke with the St. Cloud mayor and the Justice Department is vowing to bring charges against protesters who interrupted a Sunday service in St. Paul. Thanks for joining us. Protesters say that a pastor at City's Church is also the acting director of enforcement for ICE in St. Paul. Senior investigative reporter Jennifer Mayerly is here with what she's learned about what happened and what's next, Jen.
Well, Aaron, here's what we do know. St. Paul police responded. By that time, we're told protesters were out of the church. They tell us it's part of an an active disorderly conduct investigation. The feds say they've launched a civil rights investigation. This is video inside City's church in St. Paul when anti-ICE protesters interrupted service Sunday morning. Black Lives Matter Twin Cities founder Chantel Allen was there.
We went to the church and we knew that we were going to disrupt service. We knew that we were going to disrupt and ask some questions. We didn't know that it was going to turn into a full-on protest.
She says members of Black Lives Matter Minnesota and Racial Justice Network were also there to tell the congregation one of their pastors works with ICE. The last sermon WCCO found of him on YouTube was April of last year.
Envy is a sneaky sin.
Our cameras captured David Easterwood at this press conference alongside DHS Secretary Kristi Noem in October.
My name is David Easterwood. I'm the acting field office director for enforcement and removal operations, ERO St. Paul.
In general, probably the basic rule is you shouldn't be interfering with other people's church services.
Political science and First Amendment expert Professor David Schultz says charges could depend on intent.
If you do trespass against the church, try to break up a church service, and you do so with a certain type of, let's say, intent or certain types of goals, it could rise to either a criminal or a civil matter in terms of a violation of civil rights law.
Allen stands by their actions.
Interrupting a church service to inform the community of individuals that are terrorizing our community, that are standing in their pulpit, that's what we should be doing as citizens.
We asked if Allen is worried about civil or criminal charges.
I'm concerned that our citizens on a whole are in danger right now, and I'm willing to put anything on the line for our democracy.
All right, we also asked what could happen from a civil rights investigation. Schultz says people could face a fine. Criminal charges could carry jail time. Aaron?
Okay, Jen, thank you so much. Well, the number of ICE arrests across Minnesota are growing. Just today, Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem posted on X saying DHS had arrested 3,000 criminal illegal aliens, including murderers, rapists, and incredibly dangerous individuals over the past 6 weeks.
Can't believe that word that comes out.
Here's what most people don't realize.
Minnesota are growing. Just today, Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem posted on X saying DHS had arrested 3,000 criminal illegal aliens, including murderers, rapists, and incredibly dangerous individuals over the past 6 weeks. Among those 3,000 people is a couple who have called Minnesota home since 1999. They were on their way to work.
The video you just saw is a video of our parents being detained by ICE.
Susan Elizabeth Littlefield talks with their 3 daughters left behind, now fighting to get their parents back home.
Blurt out words of feelings you have in this moment.
Emptiness.
Kelsey.
A lot of anger.
Cecilia.
Sadness.
Burnt out. And Kimberly.
Burnt out is a really big one.
Mm-hmm.
Burnt out.
They are a happy family who can now only be described as sad.
Our mom is the type of person that would write us letters, like handwritten letters, when she would see us sad.
Encouragement their mother is still giving from inside this El Paso ICE detention center.
She got the call from our mom.
What did she say?
She said that she was okay and that they're getting fed 3 times a day. And she was like, don't worry about us. I just want to make sure that you guys are okay. She put her mother instincts first and made sure that we were okay first. And yeah.
What was it like hearing her voice?
It was heartbreaking. Very heartbreaking. I just told her that I loved her and I missed her.
Their father is detained too.
He's diabetic.
Do you know if he's getting?
We don't know.
The couple, who've been together for more than 3 decades, are suddenly separated by prison walls. Do you know how they met?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the 80s. And they started dancing and they clicked. My mom was like, oh my God, he's such a nice person. I really like him.
They liked each other and decided to move to the U.S.
Mexico's very poor.
So this was the land of opportunity.
Yes, well, that's what they always hear. Every Hispanic person knows that. The American dream. They want to come here.
By all accounts, they achieved it, starting a thriving family and a thriving business, cleaning offices.
They were actually on their way to work. I think they were, like a mile or two away from our house. So they had just left and they got pulled over.
ICE arrested them on January 12th in Inver Grove Heights around 6 in the morning.
Our parents are not criminals. They've never done anything. Parents were working with immigration lawyers to try to, for the residency, to get the residency. 5 days before they got detained, our dad sent us the case number saying that they got approved so they can get processed for their naturalization.
What in this moment is your hope, your prayer?
That they can be returned back to us. Yeah. We just want them home. Yeah. We want them home.
Susan Elizabeth Littlefield, WCCO News.
Hand off your taxes to an expert in your neighborhood.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. My name is Sergeant Toy Bixbaum. I'm the Public Information Officer for the St. Paul Police Department. This morning, you will be hearing from Brooklyn Park Police Chief Mark Bruley, followed by St. Paul Police Department Chief Axel Henry, and then Hennepin County Sheriff Dewana Witt. There will be time for questions. Because there's local and national news media here, please state your name and the news media outlet you're with. With that, Chief Mark Bruley.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mark Bruley, Police Chief of the City of Brooklyn Park. Behind me is a bunch of amazing police chiefs that are here in support of a very short but very important message that we want to share with you. What you won't hear from any of us today is the rhetoric of abolish immigration enforcement. The truth is, immigration enforcement is necessary for our national security and for local security. But how it's done is extremely important. In fact, we have a long history of working exceptionally well with our federal partners, including ICE agents, and we have seen the best of them perform their job extremely well in the past. With that said, recently, as the last 2 weeks, we, as law enforcement community, have been receiving endless complaints about civil rights violations in our streets from U.S. citizens. What we're hearing is they're being stopped in traffic stops or on the street with no cause and being forced to demand paperwork to determine if they are here legally. As this went on over the past 2 weeks, we started hearing from our police officers the same complaints as they fell victim to this while off duty. Every one of these individuals is a person of color who has had this happen to them. In Brooklyn Park, one particular officer that shared her story with me was stopped as she passed ICE going down the roadway. When they boxed her in, they demanded her paperwork, of which she's a U.S. citizen and clearly would not have any paperwork. When she became concerned about the rhetoric and the way she was being treated, she pulled out her phone. In an attempt to record the incident, the phone was knocked out of her hands, preventing her from recording it. The officer had their guns drawn during this interaction. And after the officer became so concerned, they were forced to identify themselves as a Brooklyn Park police officer in hopes of slowing the incident and de-escalating the incident down. The agents then immediately left after hearing this, making no other comments, no other apologies, just got in their vehicles and left.
Wow.
I wish I could tell you that this was an isolated incident. In fact, many of the chiefs standing behind me have similar incidents with their off-duty officers. This isn't just important because it happened to off-duty police officers, but what it did do is we know that our officers know what the Constitution is, they know what right and wrong is, and they know when people are being targeted, and that's what they were. If it is happening to our officers, it pains me to think of how many of our community members are falling victim to this every day. It has to stop. This behavior erodes the trust that these police chiefs have worked tirelessly for the last 5 years, theoretically the last 60 years, to stop this exact behavior from happening.
Mix and match Domino's medium specialty pizzas for just $9.99 each. Hey, Fernando, how's that sound?
Stop this exact behavior from happening. Now, I want to be really clear. I've called lots of other ICE agents and HSI agents and have talked to a lot of individuals about this. This is not widespread. This is a small group of agents within the surge in the metro area that are performing or acting this way. As a matter of fact, as rumors of this had spread, I've received phone calls from HSI agents indicating this is not what they do. Regardless, we're calling to action that we have more supervision over the surge, that this type of civil rights violations have to stop. With that, I'll turn it over to Chief Henry of the St. Paul Police Department.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Again, my name is Axel Henry. I'm the police chief for the City of St. Paul Police Department. I want to echo the sentiments that were just said and share with you that we've had employees for our city that have experienced some of the same things. Thankfully, not with firearms drawn, but traffic stops that were clearly outside the bounds of what federal agents are allowed to do. We recognize by standing here today that some might say, you're only speaking up because this is happening to the cops. Others will say that we're speaking out against ICE, and that means we want rapists on the street. Neither of those things are true. We want to find some common ground. Law enforcement has more authority than a general citizen. That means we have more responsibility in how we behave. We have to find common ground here, and we have to figure out a way that these processes, which are clearly failing if American citizens are being grabbed or stopped or seized, this can't happen. We have to make sure that everyone's civil rights are intact. I truly want to believe that there isn't anybody on either side of the political aisle that thinks that people's civil rights aren't important. They have to be the cornerstone of everything we do. Yesterday, our country honored Dr. Martin Luther King, and I was struck by the fact, and I'm paraphrasing, but he once said, we must learn to live together as brothers, or we will perish together as fools. We can't be foolish. We can't be those fools. So we are asking that we come together and figure out a way for this state and this country to resolve these things before things get any worse. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Dewana Wood, Sheriff of Hennepin County. Just yesterday, our nation honored the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Challenged us to at least remember the history, not only to remember history, but also live in its lessons. The theme of this year's MLK breakfast, make a career of humanity. And that is what myself and others are trying to do. We're trying to make sure that humanity remains in the noble profession of policing. As I know what it feels like to be stereotyped, judged, and profiled, I know firsthand what it means to be seen before being understood. Our nation, and particularly our agencies and states, have worked hard to confront the wrongs of the past. The work that has never been perfect, and is still a progress in the making. We know that we have a lot more to do, but there has been real progress, and it's very important that we do not lose sight of that. But today, unfortunately, we are seeing that progress erode. I am seeing and hearing about people in Hennepin County stopped, questioned, and harassed solely because of the color of their skin, solely being the operative word here. This is not okay now, and it's never been okay. And now, that same discrimination is also spilling into the law enforcement community. Dr. King reminded us that the time is always right to do the right thing. And for those of you in position of leadership, now is not the time to be quiet. When we are when we have concrete examples of profiling, we need to do the right thing. We cannot let people in our communities think that our local law enforcement leadership is okay with the actions that we simply know are not just only wrong, but illegal. We can't just say this is a noble profession and not treat it as such. So what does it mean to be noble? It means someone admired for high moral character, showing qualities like honesty, courage, generosity, honor, and often acting in unselflessness and integrity. Integrity. Acting in unselflessness and integrity. Integrity. One of the pillars of this profession. 5 years ago, our city, specifically Minneapolis and Hennepin County, became ground zero for civil unrest. Since that time, local law enforcement has been doing the hard, necessary work to rebuild trust within our communities. Rebuilding a community and an environment where people should feel safe. Rebuilding our law enforcement agencies with the people who honor the humanity that we want in our communities. You see, trust isn't just an abstract idea. Trust means victims of violence feel safe, calling 911. Trust means witnesses coming forward, crimes getting reported. Trust means that communities welcome law enforcement as partners in their community. You see, we just don't want to be a part of our community. We want to be partnered with our communities. And what's going on now is stifling that progress. And on a very basic level, trust means parents are not afraid to let their children go to school or church. Business owners are able to open and thrive off of their hard work of being business owners. The trust is fragile right now, and it is essential. It is an essential element to public safety. Today, that trust is being damaged, broken by the questionable and sometimes unethical actions of some federal agents, particularly in these last recent weeks. I want to be clear that I am not saying all federal agents, as all of us know that we have become victim. If somebody or one person in law enforcement does something wrong, we all pay the cost. We cannot afford to be stereotyping or generalizing anyone. Our communities have less trust in all law enforcement when this happens, not just the federal agents, but our local law enforcement, and we're here to stay. Those harmful actions causes a ripple effect through all of our professions and through all of our agencies. What I want to assure you is we are here because we all believe that our jobs are to be done professionally, lawfully, and obviously treating people with dignity and respect. Not just marginalized communities, but every single person who calls Minnesota home. This moment is the time to do what's right. We demand more from our federal government, more professionalism, more accountability, more humanity. We demand lawful policing that respects human dignity. We should not be at a point in this profession or any profession where you have to teach people how to treat people. This is the same demand we have for our own public safety professionals who serve, live, raise their own children in our communities every day. I can tell you at the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, our deputies will continue to serve and always have, professionally, lawfully, and with the respect of every person's humanity, as I'm sure all of these agencies that are represented here today are also doing. And with that, we will all continue to show up, even though times are hard, even though our law enforcement is exhausted. They're being challenged. They're having to go home and face their own families and answer these questions. We are lucky to have men and women in this profession that continue to show up despite the adversity. So we want to thank you for having us here today, and at this time we'll take questions. And yes, sorry.
Good morning. My name is Imran Ali. I am R-A-N-A-L-I. I'm an attorney here in Minnesota. Work a lot with law enforcement from corner to corner. I think it is. I mean, that is exactly what it is. That's a very difficult, issue that's before us. But the reality still remains is that the Constitution applies to everyone, and we have, and I think it's echoed, with the speakers that we've had today. We have federal ICE officers that are in their line of duty, right? They have to do what they do, right? I mean, they're ordered to do so, and they're carrying out those lawful efforts. And what we see, though, is we see people that are obstructing in that. As a lawyer, that's still a violation of the law. What we can do is we can talk about the tactics and the emotion that's there, and there's a place for that, and that place is to be discussed a lot, and also in the courtroom. And so, to give pause that what's happening here, there are mechanisms in place. There are lawsuits that we all know about. We've seen them almost every day. Something's going out. Those will play out in the court. But what can't happen, what cannot happen, is video after video of our local law enforcement officers being yelled at and threatened to by the public when they're simply there to work on behalf of the community. And I've heard from dozens and dozens of officers, and I've seen those videos. That can't happen. And that's what is increasing this temperature. It's the rhetoric and what we're seeing.
Yeah, the question was about contacting authorities in Homeland Security or ICE, Border Patrol, and and is there going to be any accountability from them conversations? Great question, complex answer. I've reached out to anybody that's willing to hear. One of the real concerning problems that I have with this surge in the metro is the span of control, in that there are so many different groups that do not know what other groups are doing or who is out at any location. And so when you call ICE leadership, or you call Border Patrol leadership, or you call Homeland Security leadership, they're unable to tell you what their people were doing that day. They're hard to find a leader to give you to. They like to give you a website to go file a complaint, but the complaint requires identity of the agents. The agents don't have name tags on. They cover their face. They don't have body cameras. And the groups that seem heavily through Border Patrol that are running up and down streets, there's no indication where they are any given day. So what I get is lots of questions that I'm unable to answer about who did what or where they did it. What I will tell you is I have contacts through 30 years of law enforcement with many different agents in ICE, HSI, and others. And those individuals who I've spoken to make several things clear to me. This is not right. They see it occurring and absolutely believe it needs to stop immediately. And they want to make it quick that it's not their groups. They're aware that there are groups that seem to be have less supervision, that they believe are involved in this. But the vast majority of these groups are doing focused, legitimate immigration work that they're tasked to do, and it's well within the bounds of being legal. So. To that point, you allege that there seems to be a small contingency of federal agents that are operating under this racial profiling strategy. What evidence or proof do you have that this is not something that's coming from the top down, from the highest ranks of our level? The evidence I have, the question is what evidence do I have that this is not coming from orders from the top from Washington, D.C. to act this way? One, I just fundamentally don't believe that. Our federal government and partners that we've worked with, that I've worked with for 30 years, have an exemplary record of performing exceptional law enforcement services. When we had the horrific events this summer and partnered with some of the finest men and women that I've ever had the benefit to be around to help us investigate a very complex political assassination. I've seen the best of what the federal government has. This is not it with a small group. With that said what we see every day, the context that we have, are agents that are working really hard in a really tough situation to do it right. I just fundamentally don't believe that it's coming from the top. In fact, I believe that I don't think the leaders in Washington, D.C. fully understand what some of their groups are doing here on the street and how much damage that they're causing, and that's why we are here to kind of bring this to light. What evidence is the question that you asked? What actual evidence do I have? None other than agents that I've talked to and leadership in certain groups of teams have made it clear that this is unacceptable behavior, that they've never been told this is okay. In fact, that they know it's not okay. They're held accountable to a higher standard, which makes me believe that what I fundamentally believe, that this is a small group of individuals performing this. And I will be honest, this really, to me, started 2 weeks ago, which feels like what the last surge of Border Patrol when they arrived, is when we started seeing this really change of behavior where it's street level jump outs or traffic stops, which the federal government is not allowed to do traffic stops and tell people that they're stopping them for speeding, which is what we're seeing. That's not allowed. They are not able to do that. They need to have reasonable suspicion that somebody is here illegally for them to stop them, whether it's on the street or to stop them in a vehicle. So. The question is, what is a small group? I absolutely have no idea. This is far outside of my purview as a local police chief. But what I do know is it's really impacting my community, what my community does and how they feel, and it's impacting our brand as police officers, our brand of how hard we work to build trust, to police in a way that builds legitimacy in what we do. And when people armed with rifles that have just police across their vest get out and act a certain way, of course our public thinks that's us. Many agencies that you've probably seen, and many of them are behind me, have had to put out pamphlets showing what a Brooklyn Park police officer looks like and what an ICE agent looks like, to make sure that we tell community they are different. Those are not Brooklyn Park officers or St. Paul officers or Brooklyn Center officers. Those are ICE agents. To answer your question specifically, I have no idea what groups or who it is or how many, but I know it is a small portion of the whole. Yeah, the question is what messages to send to the community if I, as a police chief, have a hard time getting answers. How does that leave the community for them to get answers? I think it makes them feel lost. It makes them feel concerned. It makes them feel fearful. And that's why we're here today.
The question is about jurisdiction, and when we get those complaints, what do we do with those? Again, really difficult because we have, the federal government, and we also have on the state side of it as well. Obviously, I know that, any law enforcement department in Minnesota is going to take any complaint that they get, but what sort of teeth do they have? What sort of enforcement do they have under the law? That is different. Again, the big issue here is it seems that people are just, that rhetoric is just passing like this. Everybody's passing, and then they're saying things, and they're not getting it, in their head. It's clear that those avenues that can be utilized for United States citizens that feel that something is happening, we've seen those lawsuits, and those lawsuits are appropriate, and the courtroom where those are discussed, that's appropriate as well. But as far as like the mechanism for us to investigate those on a state side, it's just not there.
We'll take a couple more questions.
We know that we talked with leadership within our federal authorities, and there has been question about the amount of training. Is the training consistent with what they were getting, say, 6 years ago? Are they going through Flexi? And then what is the vetting process like? Those have been conversations, again, at some of the highest levels that we've had. Again, they don't share that stuff with us, but I get the sense that there are some mutual feelings and that the training, some of them are not well trained. And again, I want to be careful because we do know that there's some that have impeccable training and are good at their jobs. But we are seeing an influx here, you know, to the question earlier, you know, what's a small number? Minnesota, we're seeing this in different areas. It's not just the metro area. We're hearing about it in other areas. It's the impact. This is one of those things where you don't worry about the numbers. We need to talk about the impact on what that 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth incident is causing to all Minnesotans.
Well, we have spoken to some leadership both locally with their supervisors, but also there's been a series, and you know, just as recently as this morning, and I think there's actually another one scheduled for this afternoon, where higher up elected officials are meeting with law enforcement leaders from all over the state. As you can imagine, some jurisdictions are a lot smaller than others, but we're pulling that together to get that combined message. What we're trying to get out there is that this isn't just a one-off. This isn't something that's being experienced in the way that maybe it's being described all the time on the news. That these are very specific complaints that are happening literally everywhere in our state. And so we're trying to gather that as a combined voice, and we're really trying to make it clear. We understand that there is a feeling right now that if you stand up and say something, there might be a retaliation against you. None of us want that. None of us are suggesting that there isn't a legitimate lawful authority to operate here as federal agents. But we are trying to come together to say, can we please find a pathway forward? Can we find a way to make sure that we can do these things without scaring the hell out of our community members and freaking everyone out? People are afraid right now, and I get it. We watch the news and we see very, very angry groups of people out protesting. But the people that we're dealing with as police chiefs are the people that are scared to death, that are afraid to go outside, not because their status is in question, but because they're hearing and they're seeing that they know people that are getting stopped by the way that they look, and they don't want to take that risk. Thank you.
All right, one more, and then we get to the real good, juicy stuff here. Looks like Tommy's still waiting for the pred right now. Here we go.
Yesterday show federal agents taking an older man out of his St. Paul home wearing nothing but shorts and a blanket.
Fox 9's Corin Hoggard spoke
And
with
Crocs,
the
too.
family, observers who documented this encounter, and the mayor of St. Paul, who has been speaking publicly about it.
An unexpected door repair had to happen Monday at the St. Paul home where federal agents broke it down Sunday. Observers recorded most of the action and eventually saw ICE leading away a Hmong man in clothes not fit for a 7-degree morning.
What we saw was this little elderly man wearing shorts and Crocs with a blanket, and he just looked broken. You know, it was horrible.
Observers say they heard people asking whether agents had a judicial warrant and why they took the man into custody, but most of all, why they wouldn't let him get some clothes.
I was just really scared for him.
Family members say the man is Chong Lee Scott Tao. ICE drove him around for about an hour, then let him go. He's a U.S. citizen whose mother was one of the first nurses treating American service members injured during the secret war in Laos.
They detained an
50
Asian?
years ago. That's why
Wow.
the family forged a relationship with the family of New St. Paul Mayor Kali Her. She visited with Tao's family Monday and heard his side of the story.
They didn't ask for ID. They didn't ask for to verify if it was the right person. Like, they didn't do any of those things. They literally broke into this home, grabbed the people.
Federal agents circled the neighborhood again on Monday with 3 vehicles driving past the home at least 5 times. ICE didn't answer any of our questions about the detention, but Homeland Security released a statement saying they detained him while looking for 2 convicted sex offenders. Quote, the U.S. citizen lives with these 2 convicted sex offenders at the site of the operation. The individual refused to be fingerprinted or facially ID'd. He matched the description of the targets, end quote.
That's
Yeah, okay, that's what they do, spin it.
livid because those sex offenders, we should absolutely get people who have broken the law, who've hurt other people. Those people do not live in this household with them. They are not a part of this family. That for ICE to put out a statement like that is irresponsible and it is
It's a
reckless.
crock of crap.
Mayor Hur says she's talked to a lot of Hmong Americans since this surge starts, and they're telling her they're more fearful now during the ICE surge than they were in Laos more than 50 years ago when they were fighting communists. In St. Paul, Corin Hoggard, Fox 9.
Buda, a Hays County judge, is now saying they were given no warning these operations were taking place, breaking a tradition of DHS informing local authorities of their activities. Fox 7's Marco Bittnell joins us live in studio with the latest. Marco?
Judge Ruben Becerra tells us that ICE operations aren't new in Hays County, but they're typically given a heads up from DHS that they'll be happening. This week, he says that didn't happen, potentially leading to miscommunication and how involved local agencies are in ICE activity.
Eroding at the peace, the trust, and the integrity of our local law enforcement.
Fears being raised from Hays County officials as a wave of ICE operations swept through the county. It was last week when video captured a supposed ICE detainment in Kyle. A man can be seen with a black eye and bloody face as agents take him into custody. His family confirming his identity as Luis Ernesto Fuentes Martinez, a Salvadorian national taken into custody on his way to work.
The only thing that he would have on his record is that he was here illegally, but as far as like a criminal record, he's never been arrested for anything.
On Thursday, Kyle police confirmed they responded to an EMS call at the request of Homeland Security, saying one man was taken to the hospital in federal custody. That same day, ICE activity was confirmed up the road in Buda. The city releasing this statement saying ICE agents attempted to park a transport bus at City Hall to use as a central location for operations, which the city denied due to parking reasons.
They have zero respect for local authority. They have zero respect for our sheriff's office, for our police chiefs, and our constables.
Judge Ruben Becerra says that ICE operations in Hays County aren't new, but this time there wasn't the usual warning that they were coming.
And it's always historically been a courtesy to inform local agencies on the ground of what's going on in our own communities.
Without the normal communication, Becerra worries that the public could be misled in how involved local agencies are in ICE operations.
They give our local law enforcement a bad name. People are lumping them in with our current law enforcement on the ground, our neighbors, our friends, our co-workers, our employees.
Both Kyle PD as well as the city of Buda confirming they are not involved in the latest ICE operations, with the Hays County Sheriff's Office telling Fox 7 that state law requires officers to work with ICE, but their office is not proactively engaging in immigration enforcement.
Watch out! Holy.
The operations in Kyle and Buda just the latest in ICE incidents across Central Texas. Last week, a Cuban national was arrested in San Antonio after ramming his car into agents' vehicles after failing to follow officer commands, leaving one officer injured. Governor Abbott continues to speak in support of ICE operations in the state. Earlier this week, he condemned the man involved in the latest incident in San Antonio, saying on X, quote, "These criminals must be arrested." Reporting in studio.
Abbott's a piece of crap. And you know who's condemning this like that? Telling these local and state law enforcement to stand down? Yeah, the Trump administration. The MAGA. The bigot right-wingers. Kristi Noem, big fascist. Puppy mill killer, yeah, cosplay. I mean, look at her. Her face got more plastic surgery and Botox than Anna Nicole Smith. All right, here's a good one right here.
Going on in Minneapolis last week. There was a hearing that took place on Thursday in federal court in Massachusetts, and what a judge found to be the case was so mind-blowing that I wanted to make sure that it didn't escape your notice, because it is such a profound finding based upon evidence that was presented during a multi-day bench trial in front of a federal judge that took place in September of last year, that the language that was used by the judge in this hearing had to be emphasized. And so I wanted to share it with you now, because I just feel like it's so critical for us to appreciate why we need the rule of law and why we need our judges to stand tall and to stand strong, even in the face of criticism, threats of impeachment and of harm. They need to continue to stand strong. All right. So the federal judge in this case, his name is William Young. Would you like to know a little bit about Judge Young? Well, Judge Young presides as a senior district court judge in federal court in Massachusetts. Judge Young was a Ronald Reagan nominee. Ronald Reagan got this guy appointed to the bench back in the 80s. He served as a district court judge, as the chief judge from 1999 to 2005, and then assumed senior status in 2021. Harvard undergrad, Harvard Law. And in addition, he was a judge on the Massachusetts Superior Court from 1978 to 1985, at which point in time he was appointed by President Ronald Reagan as a federal judge. So this is, by all accounts, folks, not a, quote, leftist judge. This is not a democratically appointed or nominated judge. This is a Reagan appointee. And listen to what this judge had to say. During a hearing on Thursday in open court, this judge, William Young, said that Donald Trump and top officials in his administration have a, quote, fearful approach to freedom of speech that would seek to exclude from participation everyone who doesn't agree with them, end quote. This is Judge Young, quote, talking straight here. The big problem in this case is that the cabinet secretaries and ostensibly the President of the United States are not honoring the First Amendment. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi L. Noem and Secretary of State Marco Rubio have engaged in an unconstitutional conspiracy. I'm going to say it again. An unconstitutional conspiracy to deprive people of their rights. The Secretary of State, the senior cabinet officer in our history, is involved in this. Who else is involved in this unconstitutional conspiracy, as Judge Young calls it? The President of the United States, convicted felon Donald Trump.
Yep.
Of course, after the judge makes these
Donald
findings
Trump, who is a
on Thursday, the White House
pedophile.
attacks him, calling him a left-wing activist judge that is engaging in left-wing activism against the democratically elected President of the United States. Even Tricia McLaughlin, the Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs at DHS, said in an email, quote, there is no room in the United States for the rest of the world's terrorist sympathizers, end quote. And this is about a federal judge who was appointed by Ronald Reagan. Now, what was this all about? Well, let's go back to what happened here. The judge saying that there was no policy here. What happened here is an unconstitutional conspiracy to pick off certain people. The judge saying, quote, I find it breathtaking that I've been compelled on the evidence to find the conduct of such high-level officers of our government, cabinet secretaries, conspired to infringe the First Amendment rights of people with such rights here in the United States. These cabinet secretaries have failed in their sworn duty to uphold the Constitution. During that hearing, Judge Young also described Trump as an authoritarian. And he said, I didn't want to just use this as a pejorative term. I wanted to make sure that I chose this term carefully. Judge Young compared the Trump administration's broader mass deportation campaigns to historic efforts to return formerly enslaved people to their owners under the Fugitive Slave Act. This is according to Politico's reporting. Judge Young noting an infamous episode in Boston's history when a U.S. Marshal was murdered near that federal courthouse as he guarded a man by the name of Anthony Burns who escaped slavery in Virginia. Can you imagine a federal judge, an older white male federal judge, stating that Trump is an authoritarian and then comparing the Trump administration to its efforts in deportation and immigration enforcement to efforts historically under the Fugitive Slave Act to be able to return formerly enslaved people to their owners? I mean, people, it's incredibly powerful. So what does this deal with? What case is this? Well, this case deals with a lawsuit that was brought in the federal court in Massachusetts, in district court. And it was brought by the American Association of University Professors, the Harvard faculty chapter, the American Association of University Professors at NYU, Rutgers, etc. And why? Because it was on behalf of a group of 5 non-citizen students and scholars. non-citizens. Remember this really important adjective, non-citizens, because that status is something that we always talk about here. Due process is for all people, regardless of your citizenship, right? And so these are 5 non-citizen students and scholars. Mahmoud Khalil, someone that you have heard about a lot. Yunso Chung, Mohsen Madwawi, they're students at Columbia University. Rumesa Ozturk, and you'll remember her when I refresh your recollection about the facts of her case. Rumesa Ozturk, a graduate student at Tufts, and Badar Kansuri, a postdoctoral scholar at Georgetown University. All of them were arrested except for Yunso Chung, who successfully evaded being arrested and got a restraining order against ICE before they could find her and arrest her. The 4 that were arrested were eventually released after weeks of being in detention because federal judges, standing tall and being strong in the defense of the rule of law, entered orders ordering their release, even though the Trump administration still is actively trying to deport these non-citizen students and scholars. And unfortunately, as a footnote, this past Thursday, a federal appeals court in Philadelphia overturned the lower court ruling in Mahmoud Khalil's case, stating that there is now a possibility that he could be rearrested. So we got to watch that carefully, right? But here's what happened. There was a 2-week bench trial in front of Judge William Young. And during that bench trial, evidence was taken. And I want to just take one hot second, if I could, with you people. Here's the deal. The reason why going to court is so important is people can make allegations like Kristi Noem did about the poor late Renee Good, right? Calling her a domestic terrorist. And you know how they're running around saying that Kilmar Abrego Garcia is a member of Tren de Aragua. And they call people all these things, and they say they do all these bad things, but they never provide the evidence, do they? So when you go to court and you have good judges, they will do things like evidentiary hearings, and during those evidentiary hearings, you find out that Gregory Bovino lied. That would happen in a federal judge in Chicago, right? Or you go to trial in California or in Portland, and during those trials, federal judges say, wait, there's no evidence of chaos and violence that merits the federalization of the National Guard and the deployment of military in these cities. So I'm going to order that, yeah, you can federalize them, but you can't deploy them, right? Things like that are happening because you get evidence taken. Because evidence requires proof. And if you don't have the proof, all you have is rhetoric. And rhetoric is not enough, people. And we're going to hear that play out in this trial. So there's a 2-week bench trial in front of Judge Young. And during this 2-week bench trial, this is what the facts we're dealing with. And this is what came out during this trial. Here's the evidence. Senior administration officials in the Trump administration directed personnel at DHS who normally are dealing with real important stuff like analyzing transnational criminal networks, right? That's important shit. Instead, DHS personnel were directed by senior Trump administration officials to produce reports on students that were involved in, quote, pro-Palestinian protests. This is testimony, people. I'm not just saying this. This is actual testimony from the trial that took place in September in front of Judge Young. These analysts at DHS relied heavily on thousands of profiles that were generated by this group called Canary Mission. Totally anonymous, opaque, pro-Israel group that claims that it's documenting individuals that, quote, promote hatred of the USA, Israel, and Jews on college campuses. So Homeland Security investigators, using a list created by this totally opaque organization called Canary Mission.
Hi, I'm YouTube, and on YouTube,
HSI investigators generated between 100 to 200 reports on student protesters. I mean, how dark can you get? Then DHS referred these reports to the State Department, stating you need to revoke the visas and the green cards of these students and scholars, thereby doing what? When you revoke their visas and their green cards, then you actually open the floodgates for the deportation and removal proceedings. Within weeks, several of these students and scholars were arrested by masked federal agents in plain clothes, didn't identify themselves, right? Flown to detention facilities hundreds of miles away from their homes, and not given the ability to be able to contact loved ones or attorneys. It's a new year, and it's time for new shapewear and bras from Honeylove. Honeylove is an independent female-founded brand with products designed by women who actually wear them, like me. I have an amazing Honeylove crossover bra. I got it in the gorgeous color Fig.
Maybe I'll tell
and
Sandy
with no
about that.
underwire, it means it's comfortable, easy to
doesn't-
wear.
and
It's
she
the
doesn't
only
know
bra
about
you're
that
not going to
already.
rip
Right.
right off when you get home. From sizes 38 to 44G, the Honeylove crossover bra flatters every body, every shape, in every size. And it's supportive for smaller busts without slipping or constant adjusting, but it's also equally reliable, lifting, and comfortable for fuller sizes. And as for my Honeylove shapewear, it gives me targeted compression in all of those places I need help with. And there's no squeezing. It always stays in place. In other words, it's designed to work with your body naturally, not against it. So treat yourself to the most advanced bras and shapewear that's out there on the market. Use our exclusive link to save 20% off of Honeylove at honeylove.com/Fang. That's my last name, Phang. You got to go to honeylove.com/Fang. After you check out, they're going to ask you, where did you hear about them? So please support the show and tell them that we sent you. Experience the new standard in comfort and support with Honeylove. Officials and agents from Homeland Security testified under oath during this federal trial that they had never been asked to compile reports on student protesters before 2025, nor had they ever been asked to arrest non-citizen students because their immigration status had changed. Until this administration, right? Okay, so during this trial, after the 2 weeks, Judge Young entered a 161-page order wherein he found during that trial that the Trump administration illegally arrested and deported these international students and scholars for their First Amendment free speech rights to express their concern, fear, and anger over what was happening between Palestinians and Israel. Judge Young writing in this 161-page order, quote, "We are not and we must not become a nation that imprisons and deports people because we are afraid of what they have to tell us." He has said that this is the most important case ever to fall within the jurisdiction of this district court. And he said in this order that Trump simply ignores it all when he takes it into his head to act. But the president is not entirely lawless, right? And the key question that was answered by Judge Young in this order is whether non-citizens in our United States have the same rights to freedom of speech as citizens. Judge Young stating, quote, unequivocally, yes, they do. Now, you may remember this order from Judge Young that came up back in September 30th of 2025 because he put a postcard at the beginning. I mean, it's so creative. Judge Young put this postcard dated June 19th, 2025 that he received in chambers at the top of the order. And the postcard says this, quote, "Trump has pardons and tanks, ... What do you have? Question mark. And sent in all caps. And this is what Judge Young wrote below. Dear Mr. or Ms. Anonymous, alone, I have nothing but my sense of duty. Together, we the people of the United States, you and me, have our magnificent Constitution. Here's how that works out in a specific case." And then he goes on to make his findings. I want to quickly talk about something here that is really important, okay? That's located on page 98 of this 161-page order, and it deals with masks, because we're dealing with masks out of Minneapolis and all over our country. Masked federal agents that are armed, that are terrorizing our fellow Americans. And I want to read what Judge Young had to say, because I think it's really important for you to hear this. And there's the issue of masks. This court listened carefully to the reasons that were given by Romeza Ostruck's captors for masking up, and has heard the same reasons advanced by the defendant Todd Lyons, the acting director of ICE. And what was that excuse? Well, according to the testimony given, the reason why they mask up is, are you ready? Quote, "We chose to wear them because they were worried about revealing their identities and for reasons of operational security." What does the judge say? This court rejects this testimony as disingenuous, squalid, and dishonorable. ICE goes masked for a single reason: to terrorize Americans into quiescence. It should be noted that our troops do not ordinarily wear masks. Can you imagine a masked Marine? It is a matter of honor, and honor still matters. To us, masks are associated with cowardly desperados and the despised Ku Klux Klan. In all our history, we have never tolerated an armed, masked secret police. Carrying on in this fashion, ICE brings indelible obloquy to this administration and everyone who works in it. Quote, "We cannot escape history," Abraham Lincoln rightly said. "It will light us down in honor or dishonor to the latest."
Recovering.
Light us down in honor or dishonor to the latest generation. This is about masks. This court hearing testimony after a 2-week bench trial, Judge Young saying that it rejects this testimony that we have to wear masks out of operational security and for safety. This court saying that is disingenuous, squalid, and dishonorable. They want to terrorize Americans, and that's why ICE goes masked. Ain't that the damn truth, people? I've always said here and publicly, if you are so proud of the work that you are doing, ICE, then you should not wear masks. But you wear masks because you know what you're doing is shameful and oftentimes illegal and unconstitutional. And I want to quickly read a little bit more from Judge Young's order back in September because I found it to be so powerful. This is on page 99 of his order. Finally, perhaps we don't much care. After all, these plaintiffs, a group of non-citizen pro-Palestinians, are relatively small compared to the much larger interest groups who have every right vigorously to espouse the cause of the state of Israel. Palestine is far away, and its people are caught up in the horrors of a modern war with heavy ordnance wreaking massive indiscriminate destruction, a war that is not one of our making. Why should we care about the free speech rights of their compatriots here among us? Here's why. The United States is a great nation not because any of us say so. It is great because we still practice our frontier tradition of selflessness for the good of us all. Strangers go out of their way to help strangers when they see a need. In times of fire, flood, and national disaster, everyone pitches in to help people we've never met, and first responders selflessly risk their lives for others. Hundreds of firefighters rushed into the Twin Towers on 9/11 without hesitation, desperate to find and save survivors. That's who we are. And on distant battlefields, our military fought and died for the men they marched among. Quoting Frank Lesser from the Ballad of Roger Young. Each day I recognize, to paraphrase Lincoln again, that the brave men and women, living and dead, who have struggled in our nation's service have hallowed our constitutional freedom far above my or anyone's poor power to add or detract. The only constitutional rights upon which we can depend are those we extend to the weakest and the most reviled among us. Expecting no self-correction or even outcry for the amalgam of reasons above, this court proceeds to lay the legal groundwork supporting an effective order and then sketches the special issues extant today. How powerful, people. Judge Young, my hat off to you for being a noble defender of the rule of law and a defender of democracy. This past Thursday during the hearing, when the judge talked about the unconstitutional conspiracy between cabinet members and Donald Trump, the judge said this coming Thursday, January 22nd, he will issue a detailed order that will protect the rights of the plaintiffs in these cases. Non-citizen plaintiffs. People, how more profound can our country be that we give rights that are equal to those of citizens to non-citizens? Why? Because it's the United States of America, and that's how we fucking roll here. That's what we do. Because we have the luxury and the privilege of living in the United States of America. We have a constitution that affords due process to everyone here, regardless of their citizenship status. That is how it was written. That is how it must be. Don't look at me. If you have an issue with it, people take it up with the Constitution. But people like Judge William Young will forever be known for having standing tall in the face of tyranny.
Yep.
And he continues to fight the good fight. This, my friends, is why I wanted to spend time with you today to talk about this order, this ruling, this language that is so incredibly powerful and sadly still echoes and resonates today, even though this order was entered back in September. But we'll see, I bet you, even more powerful language from Judge Young this coming Thursday. Be mad, be outraged, demand accountability. It's day, January 20th. It is 1 year since convicted felon Donald Trump just inexplicably made it back to the Oval Office but we're here fighting. Katie Fang here. We launched the Katie Fang.
All right. That's another case of happy fuck the ICE agents day. Fuck ICE, abolish ICE. With that said, I'm not hearing much out. Peace out.